Good morning, and welcome to Sunday Soul Day, weekly fuel for your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Damesha Craig, and I am so excited for our guest today. Today we have Roxanne Glaser, known as Superdoodle Girl, who's found solace in art and creativity through life's challenges. After losing her husband and sister, doodling, lettering, and meditation became her lifeline for processing grief. Welcome to Sunday Soul Day.
Hi, welcome, Damesha. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. So I wanted to just talk about how we came into contact. It was through the amazing Ashley Ellington Brown who introduced us. We had Ashley on, and she talked all about her incredible book, A Beautiful Morning, and she then introduced us, and so I was so happy she did because I became obsessed with all of your content after I came into contact with it, and also just with you, you're such a beautiful light, and so I couldn't wait to have this conversation and have the audience get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you so much. Yes, Ashley is amazing. I met her at Lucky Star Art Camp and became familiar with her work. And it was quite interesting because the morning ritual was also so important to me. And then when I found out that's what her book was about, it's amazing the power of that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it changed my life. It was such a beacon of light for me, during a time that was a struggle when I first kind of had my children and transitioning from not having children to then being a mother of two really small children. And so I am forever grateful to her. And then, to have it be full circle and have her come on the show was just a pinch me moment. So I am so excited to dive into your background a little bit. Your journey with art and creativity has been deeply intertwined with moments of grief and trauma. You talked about finding solace and healing through doodling, lettering, and meditation. Can you share a little bit more about that and just, kind of how that really came about during these challenging times?
Yeah, as you in the intro, you mentioned the loss of a spouse and a younger sibling. That was in 2015 now. And I always like to be very clear, it was not my only tool. It was one tool in my toolkit. And part of what I discovered in that practice was I was needing a way, and I didn't know it at the time because I have more words now for what I was doing, but it was a way to get me out of my head. Because when I would be alone and it would be quiet in the house at night, I would just think and I would think about things and I would wish things were different than they were. And so I would just think and think. And then I also was dealing with anxiety and depression at the time. And so I had ruminating thoughts. And not only would my thoughts loop, they would loop and spiral. So I had that catastrophic thinking as well. So, you'll have like the little thing and it keeps coming back. And then I would make it very big. So what I discovered in that aftermath I started a yoga practice. And so that led me to become a yoga teacher. So I now teach a restorative and healing style of yoga. And then what I discovered in the creative practice, so I took a lettering class, was that this was a way to combine a mindfulness practice in a different way. And so when we think of mindfulness is really rooting yourself in the present, and it also makes you very present in your body, which brings you to the immediate present, not the past, not the future. That's Eckhart Tolle, power of now, right? And so that's how breath centers us. And so I started using my painting and my drawing and watching that line come from whatever tool I was making on the page to help center and ground me.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you said so much there. And I love forgot to mention the yoga as well, which is so healing. I've practiced yoga since I was like 16 years old, off and on, but it is every time I get off of it, I can always feel it, in my body. And so I love that you mentioned that. And also that this was just one of many tools, that that helped you through that time. Tell me a little bit about that time because you also had a devastating house fire that you experienced a little bit later. I mean, you went from it feels like one trauma to another.
Yeah, it's been quite the interesting journey of that, where I would explore like these tools, that my healing toolkit. So I think of that. I was using, I came to yoga, which was the only time like during the day where I would feel kind of okay for a moment. And so
Mm,
I would do 2 hours of yoga each day in the morning and the evening. I also had talk therapy. I had the use of pharmaceuticals to help. So was taking medication there. And I was also, another big part of my practice was gratitude in the morning and the evening. So that gratitude practice. And then I also walked a lot, like long walks, like 3 miles, 7 miles. I love walking as a way to process. But as you kind of mentioned, that would when I step back now and look at it, there'd be an event, and so the first was the loss of my husband, and so I would kind of use things, and I would get to where I was like, I kind of almost irreverently, but jokingly would say I'd finally get up off the floor again, because a lot of times during that period, I would just lay on the floor and look at the ceiling fan, and so I would kind of start to feel a little bit better and start going around, and then something else would hit. And so it was 6 months later that my sister died, and I was like, because I started thinking, oh, I'd had it all figured out. I know how this rolls. And then so I had compounding traumatic events. And so then after Brandy passed away in 2016, actually, uh, this is the anniversary of her death. So
wow.
today, yeah. Um, So with that, I would just kind of continue on that process. I didn't know, I just kept doing the next thing. And that's what we said in the grief journey and grief recovery. You say, just do the next thing. And I added on to it, do the next thing always with kindness and love. So just whatever that next step was, if it was take a shower, if it was, go to work, whatever the next thing was. And so I just kind of progressed with it. And I have to confess to you, by 2022, I was like, I got this. Everything's all good. I have it all pieced back together. I was feeling good. What was my word of the year was create. I started doing the word of the year in 2016, and everything. And so that year I was like, I got it. I launched my first official online course that year. And things were looking up. And now my cat did die, and it was my husband's cat. Blackie was 22 years old. He had a great life, great life. So he passed away. But still, 2022, there were some big challenging events, but I was able to go with the flow, I felt like. And then Christmas Day, the fire happened. So Christmas Eve 2022, just think about what you do on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Think of the festivities, the Christmas lights. Well, that year I packed up and I went to stay with my cousin. I was going to spend a couple days with her, and I got a text, or actually Christmas morning. My stepdaughter and her family were in Tennessee, so I'd done a FaceTime with them. It was great to see them. I was walking. It was one of those, in Texas, we have this winter that is sunny and 60, and it was one of those days. Blue sky, like the sky was just beautiful. I had a great walk. We're starting to prepare the lunch, and we sit down about 3. We were gonna eat a little bit later, and we were playing a game, and I get a text that says, "Hey, Roxanne, it's Allie, your neighbor. Your house is on fire. Call me."
Oh,
And I know this is kind of like a little bit long story, but it gives
no.
context to the journey. Um, so that moment, and I think some of your listeners will resonate with this, when you've had a moment that is so shocking that you feel the electricity. It's almost like electricity in your body, like that head to toe, just like you've been zapped. So I called her, and then this next phrase, like there's no course, no way to prepare you for this. But I tell people now so you could think about it, because I'm like, Allie, what? She was like, okay, the firefighters are here. They have it under control. They're inside your house, and they want to know, is there anything you would like for them to get out? Okay, so just think through that. So if you've not thought through, if there is a house fire and if you do have the possibility of getting something out quickly, what would you get?
Yeah. What would you grab in that moment? Yeah.
And if you're not there, you're 2 hours away, and so you have to tell someone where it is to grab for you. I couldn't even, I could not put anything in words. So that upended, it was so different. All right. So it's very different from a grief where you have a death, and because you kind of have your place where you can mourn that and grieve. When it's your house and the place is gone, like how do you, it was just mind blowing. So that set me on a different journey for 2023. And the shock was intense. And as I say, doodling is helpful, but you might need more things in any
Absolutely.
situation.
So now I want to know, what did you grab?
Okay, this is when I was immediately, because I have the little fire safe had all my documents in it, and and when she described where the fire was, I knew that wasn't of immediate. All my uh, external devices, my storage devices. So I was trying to explain where that was. And then there were some precious like family photos that I wanted. Like that's all I could think of in the moment. However, and it was immediate, like my cousin that I stayed with, she's literally a first responder. She's a healthcare professional. And she was like, I'm driving you, get in, here we go. And so on the way, I started making a list of things. She was like, hands me this little notebook. And it's like, I need you to make a list of what we need to get when we get there. So Christmas Day, by the time we get to my house, it was past twilight. So go with me. You have a little bit of light outside. There's no electricity inside. And we went in with the light of we had a couple flashlights, but our phones. And I had called friends who were local, so they were there because things you don't even think of. They went through the front door, which could not then be locked. So we needed to secure the place. So all these things are hitting me. So on the way down there, I made a list of things that were important to get out of my house. So okay, go with me. This is just where I was. I had these sparkle watercolor paints that I had gotten from Juvie Wilson, and they make me so happy. And she had sent them to me as a Christmas present, and I had left them on my coffee table. So I wanted my paints. I wanted to grab my Alexas so I could have my ocean waves play in the evening. So I had that. I needed my scanner. I thought this is where I was at the time. I also had just bought 6 dozen of the most amazing homemade tamales,
No, stop.
and they were in the freezer. So I was like, we've got to get the
Why?
tamale. And
I,
seriously, okay.
I understand because if I had tacos on the list, I probably would add tacos on there. So,
And I tell people all the time, they're like, tamales. I was like, these are
yeah.
not just, these are cream cheese, bacon, jalapeno tamales. And someone had sent me some chocolates. So my friend Laurence had sent me chocolates from France. So I was like, I need to grab my chocolates. I needed my special coffee mug, my Vitamix, and my Nespresso coffee maker. Like, because we were like, and we didn't know these were like, um, perhaps they would be there, maybe they wouldn't, but we were like, okay. And honestly, we were just going in, and I was like, pictures of the family. And we just grabbed stuff. And so after that, it was just a complete series of figuring out how to put myself back together.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so much there. Now, I have to ask, was the entire house destroyed or was a part of it okay?
It was not. And this is when I
Wow.
started feeling the hand of Providence. Okay. So a fire started at the back door. It went through the kitchen. There was some water damage a lot of water damage in the living room. And in the corner of the living room, there was a desk, and it had this type structure next to it. And it's where I would do my evening painting. So it was in the living room, and it was on a 4x6 rug was underneath it. And there was a lot of water damage all over the living room, and it stopped right at the edge of the rug.
Um,
That was the first thing that happened. Every room in the house had to have the ceiling had to have holes poked in it to help him put out the fire. And so we had the stuff falling in. One other room had no damage at all, and it was my office where the rest of my art supplies were and all of my technology.
Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah, definitely the hand. Absolutely.
So all of what you see
Was
behind me,
untouched.
all of my journals, all of my art supplies, completely untouched.
That is God. That is wow. Wow. Okay. Take a pause there. That is incredible.
Yeah, it was whenever I do a program called The Art of Daily Creative Practice, and I use my journals that I started creating a little bit before 2015, but through now to tell the story. And it really is astounding to see when I can take a whole suitcase of stuff that survived, that was untouched.
Wow. Now tell me, after that, what what advice did anyone give to you or did you learn that you could give to someone else who maybe has lost something like that or, has even experienced a fire?
There was so It was just amazing when I didn't even have the words to ask, right? Because I was just this puddle and I had people around me who would protect me that I didn't even have to drive for almost 3 weeks. So
Wow.
yeah, and Missy made me take a little driving test around the neighborhood before she gave me approval to drive myself again.
Yeah.
But I had such amazing things. And so that's where Missy, one of the phrases she would always say to me, because I would get very impatient, because I am a very independent, kind of self-sufficient type of person. And I would be like, oh, I should be here. I should be. She would be like, it has been 12 days since the fire. Be gentle. And so we would say gentle, gentle, just to take it a little calmer. I've had another close friend that she had had a house fire from a lightning strike several years back. And what she told me, which I did take to heart, she said, okay, because when we moved stuff out of my house, I had 30 friends come over. There were about 30 people on New Year's Eve. So our team building activity was move my stuff out of the house. So they just packed everything up. And they were very gentle with me to where I didn't make any decisions. They were like, I could say immediately I didn't want a few things, but everything else, they were like, when in doubt, we're not going to ask Roxanne to make a decision. They had me sit down in a little chair and would just give me water to drink because I would get overwhelmed just being in the structure. And what Cynthia told me, she said that what they did was, she said, we packed everything up. She said, then they went through it. And she said, everything that they put back into the home did not come in a box. So she said, take this as an opportunity
Mhm.
and to not let the stuff become a burden. And I was like,
Oh,
ooh,
that's so good. Oh, that's good.
yeah. So things like that. And it was just that, uh, yeah, to just feel such hugs and loves. And
Mm.
and the other thing too that I've learned on the receive end, like immediately so many people wanted to help and I couldn't take in because I couldn't manage like all the incoming. And so I had this amazing team and there were probably three or four and they had a group text. And so if anything came to me, I could just give like Missy's phone number and she would manage like this one group. And then I had a group down here and Jeannie would just kind of text out if we needed something. And so it was this like communication structure to
Mm.
where I could just be
Mm.
because I was like, I showed you my little journal. That was my little brain. And then I had this little journal because I had packed my supplies that Christmas Eve to go and stay with Missy. So this was my crying and quotes and prayers. So this one, I literally would sit in the evenings and I would just, whatever I needed to put in the journal, I
Wow.
would put in it. And so sometimes it would be just shapes. And I did all of this journal in 2.5 weeks. And so you see it, and you can see how as it gets more into it, there are more words. And so this particular day, I just wrote in here and I would write prayers that people would send me. And it was a way to make that kind of invisible visible to where I could hold on to it because I felt so destabilized. There was nothing to hang on to. I wrote this and I love this. It was like, today I was aware of loss. I felt both safe with a place and without a place. I can never really settle in. I'm aware of how my art is messy. So for some reason that just popped in. Um, I realize I'm not going back and my plan to move forward has not yet formed.
Hmm.
I am in the space between.
I love, oh my gosh. Okay.
It-
First of all, so many gems that you just dropped with your advice. And then also, what a gift your friends were just to rally around you. I mean, that is such a blessing, just to have that support and allow yourself to just be. Because a lot of times we're in that mode where you're just like, okay, you're almost like a machine, like a robot. You're just like operating. So I love that they removed that from you and allowed you to just be. So that was the first. And I love the word you used, like how you said destabilize, It's almost as if that journal was like your grounding, like your stabilization, like allowed you to just feel whatever you were feeling in that moment and then leave it there, but then it's like you could look back, oh, so good. So good. Well, that brings me to the next question. And because as Superdoodle Girl, first of all, how'd you come up with that name? I love that. Like Superdoodle. I love that.
Okay, honestly, it was a joke. Like the joke,
No.
seriously, because gosh, it was been years ago. We did a presentation at a tech conference, and we were doing it. It was a superhero themed conference. And so there was a group of, I think there were 3 or 4 of us that came together. And so we were doing it was an all-female in tech conference. And so we were sharing what our superpowers were. And so we each had a little superhero character. And so I kind of would just sketch them out, like drew us and made our slide deck for us. And so I was Superdoodle Girl for that one. It's been a while back because I found not long ago it was an old blog spot that was superdoodlegirl.blogspot.com. Yeah. So when I started posting, and I started posting in 2016 after I took Jeannie's lettering class, and I just wanted to share my starting out. And so I was like, well, I'll just use Super Doodle Girl. And now I was like, it really became my superpower. I always laugh. I'm like, I can make marks on the page and they look kind of cool.
Absolutely, they do. I love all of your content. But so you're now leading uplifting workshop and like journal jumpstart. Am I saying that one correct? And creative meditative flow, and even doing some more that you're working on. So, um, how do these workshops help participants kind of overcome their creative blocks and reconnect with their authentic selves?
This has been the most unexpected journey where
Mm.
all the time I was really just trying to make myself feel better. And I would start sharing, and I'm like, okay, here's how I'm doing this. Here's how I'm doing this. Or I'd, shoot a little video and do a little voiceover. And it started gaining attention. And when I started Journal Jumpstart, this was the one, 2022, the year I thought was going to rock that. Well, it's okay. I had an idea because I'd been teaching other creative classes, and I kept hearing from ladies that they would buy journals and they wouldn't put anything in them. And the more we would unpack that, they were like, I got this beautiful journal. And so they would spend all this attention to getting this journal. And
Mhm.
then they would notice they needed other supplies. So instead of doing the practice of using the journal, it was the buying of the supplies with the procrastination.
Mhm.
So I was like, well, what if we get a smaller journal and we do it kind of we benchmark it and we do it together. Like we've got a little small group, kind of that small group coaching kind of thing where we're going to do this together, got a little accountability group, and I'm going to just show you what to do. You copy me if you want to do something else as well. And it was incredible. Had ladies that went from a blank journal to a completed journal. I heard stories they were like carrying around their purse. They'll pull it out. They'll show you. They're gonna, I feel like they were in line at the grocery store, like just, interrupting people, being like, they were so proud of their work. And so I was like, that's kind of interesting. And what I've discovered, and then the creative meditative flow came out last year as I was doing the work of healing, to where I was like, oh, it really is that mind, body, soul connection of, can we basically both of these? It's rewriting this mindset of, it's a process of unlearning, because along the journey of our life, we will hear a comment or we will take an experience and we'll turn it into a story that we believe to be true, and it might not be. And we will start to say things to ourselves of, I'm not creative, I'm not this, or I'm not that, or, I only do this. And so part of both of those workshops is unlearning. You and I have ladies who come to it with an idea of what it means to be creative. We do some work around that of like, let's take a little more expansive definition of that. And so part of what I do for ladies to get them to that authentic self, so we do some unlearning, and then I give them what I call is a structured creative approach. Because one of the things I've also learned, or the workshops or the classes where they're like, oh, you just do the thing. And so some artists can do the thing, but they can't teach others how to do the thing, because I break down what are the skills you need. We need to do this. We need to do this. So it's structured creativity, which constraints give you freedom.
Mhm.
So some people will bristle at the idea of constraints. They're like, oh, you're holding me back. I'm like, constraints will explode your creativity. And so that's basically kind of what I've figured out is a way to have a roadmap to transition you from buying the supplies to actually use the supplies. And then you've got to find out what lights you up. All right. So that's the unlearning and relearning.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And I love that you solved a problem, and I think like I've heard that so many times, with journals. Like, I mean, I've been even guilty of buying some journals and not really doing much with them, because I like to free flow, but then I also like to have like some structure, like you mentioned, so I love that you solved that problem with the people coming to your workshops, because I can see that being a challenge, and them not being able to even know where to begin. That was one of the things I always hear. I don't even know where to begin with this journal, so so I love that.
Oh, can I add on? Because
Yeah, please.
what I discovered when we were doing, I've run Creative Meditative Flow twice now. And one of the feedback that I got after the first time, because my idea with that is, we come and we do an open meditation, we do a little breath work, and then I play music and kind of guide. And when I say guide, I show them like I'm working with them. So it's a co-working session. What we discovered is if you don't already have a repertoire, a visual repertoire, or like know how to make marks, it's very difficult. So it's
Yes.
that same thing of like, yeah, sketchnoting or drawing for understanding works if you already know how to draw. So I changed, and now what I've added in is we do a little prep work. We're going to practice, we're going to draw some things, and then I do a directed instruction I filmed myself. I'm like, this is the process I'm going to be using, so they can watch me. They can practice before they come to use it to get into flow state.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. That is so good. Well, I cannot wait to take a class. You already know that. So like sign me up for the next one. Um, how do you encourage individuals to kind of embrace, the process and embrace joy and really their play? Because I love that it's really tapping into that childlike, creative play. Especially, those that come and they're, not comfortable, because I can imagine like if you're kind of co-working, they're not comfortable, even starting, because they think to themselves, I can't draw, I'm not creative, I'm not, all these things. So how do you encourage that?
Okay, I love this question so much because let me just tell you the demographics of the ladies who take my classes. So this past couple of months, it's been really mind blowing. I have some they self-proclaimed quote recovering engineers that are now they want to have a more like free flowing kind of explore that part of it. I have professional artists who come who are looking to open awareness into exploring different types of art. I've had professional calligraphers who are, and in calligraphy, it is very um, regimented, certain strokes that you learn. And so they want to move from that more technical to a little more creative or kind of open their awareness. And then I have complete newbies who are like, Roxanne, I have never done anything like this before. So I have this wide range and then also a wide season of life. So we have ladies that can do this all day to others who are like managing global teams who are like, I do it once I get through security and I have, I'm in the lounge, I've got 10 minutes to. So this wide range. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the unlearning is always part of it. And then in the relearning, we have to relearn play
Mm,
because we are, and especially in our culture that is like time boxed and task oriented, and we have to do this and that, or we multitask and we're not really paying attention to anything. So that here's how to play. And so I will sometimes show and you'll see it in the comments on my Instagram reels, and it's very people get really anxious watching me play because it will take a turn or there will be a perceived accident. You roll with it. You're like, things happen and you have to just keep going. I mean, and that's a lesson I learned, I think, after the fire was like, I didn't want to keep going. Like, I'm like, really? Another thing? You just pick up and you do the next thing. And so I try to model that for them. And then I also explicitly now I give permission slips. I'm like, it is okay.
I love the permissions. That's so good. That's so good. I love that. And people need that. They need, because I say this all the time, we don't give ourselves permission to do a lot of things that is really in our hearts to do, but for whatever reason, we've been taught everything else. And so I love that. And even just being, like in that moment, in that present moment, what a gift. What an absolute gift. Love that. Well, your mission is really involves helping people get unstuck, what we just talked about a little bit, and really just simply using creative tools to create. And so, can you share some examples of how doodling and other creative practices can help individuals navigate challenges that they experience in their life? And also, if you have any handy, I'd love to see some too. Love to show the audience.
Yeah, the basically a couple of simple ones. Let's see, because I work a lot with, you know, people coming in, like I said, different seasons of life, different experiences. And we've had ladies who are in my class that one lady started Journal Jumpstart and her mom had passed away the day before we started. So she was just, just tough. We've had ladies that have had surgery, just life happens, right? If you're on the planet long enough, you're going to have like big things that you have to deal with. So one of the things that I really think and try to teach and share is that if you can find a mindfulness practice, whether it is yoga, whether it is breathing, meditation, and now what I do, like what I teach in creative meditative flow of that, just watching what's coming from your brush or your pen, that roots you in the present. And if you can calm that prefrontal cortex, the chatter for just a bit, just a little bit of a pause, right? That little pause, that's that space between the waves of anxiety, of grief, of pain. So if you notice that little, and when we talk about breathing, 4-part breath, it's the inhale, little space between, the exhale, and a little space between. that is what I think that I can do with doodling and with a simple creative practice. It doesn't have to be fancy. We're not painting, 12 foot by 12 foot murals here. So we're talking small and just simple. That pause, that space between is where you can be
Mm,
and when you can rest. So that I think that's really one of the things that I've been encouraging. And then when we can quiet that front of the mind, then things will start to show up. And I shared with you, this was my after the fire journal. So this one went through January 13th. So the fire was Christmas Day. And so January 13th, I completed this entire journal. And one of the techniques I teach is that we do the first page last. Takes the pressure off of the first page. You start on page 2. And so this is what I wrote concluding this journal. Deep breaths, this journey, this path. It's not meant to question who you are, but instead help you align who you've been with who you are meant to be. Only you know what that means. No one can tell you who you are except you. And so that was me January 13th, 2023, after the house fire. And when I finished, see this little, it's so cute, right? Well, after I finished that, I felt a need to take up space because I didn't have a physical space, but I felt it in my journaling practice. Are you ready for this? And then I went to one this big.
whoa. Oh my gosh.
And so this one continued. This is from 2023. And so what I would do here is people would send me prayers and they would send me these most beautiful messages, and I would write them in my journal. And so this was a beautiful exploration. And I know that's not on camera. And so I would just kind of play. So I would just make things in it. I'd play with color, I'd play with words, and then you're going to love this. Somewhere along the way, like people started showing up. And I've never drawn people or done people, but these interesting,
So
I call
beautiful.
them the girl. And it was just a blast.
Oh, wow.
And so this is what I share with people is that when you can quiet the
Mhm.
front part that's telling you you should do this or you should do that and just let things flow, interesting things will come. And so this journal, my last page, which we know now, we do the first page last. This is a Mary Oliver quote, if I may. Is it okay if I?
Yes, please. Please, of course.
There was a new voice which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do that which only you could do, determined to save the only life you could save yourself.
My gosh, that is a beautiful, beautiful quote.
So yeah, so that was kind of and
And
so
you
I
definitely took up space. That is that journal is huge. Oh my gosh. But I love that you mix the doodling, and the drawing with the words, because words are so powerful and they penetrate, and I always say when you write them, they penetrate even more, So I love your practice. Oh my gosh. We could talk about this all day. But I feel like you're giving so much, like, you said, like, this is a process where, it's helping you heal too, as you're going through and doing it with your class. And I love that you do it side by side with them. But you're giving so much, and I hope you know that, it's such a gift what you're doing. How do you take care of yourself in addition to doing this in breath work, like you mentioned in yoga? What are some kind of rituals that you've adapted over the years and kind of taken on as your practice to fuel your mind, your body, and your soul?
this is another one. When I saw this question, it was like, I love this so much. And I love it because each one of us can control our our practice, really, that's the part you can control. And I met with a group yesterday and we were talking about the practice. And my favorite quote, I want to get this right. This was from The Practice by Seth Godin. And he says, the practice is consistent, but only with intention, not in execution. Which I love that so much because sometimes I think we get spun up on the intention and perfection, we could talk for hours on that.
Yeah.
So my intention is to start and end each day with a gratitude practice. And then I started, let's see, what was it? In 2017, I quit drinking alcohol. And so now I'm a huge, like coffee is my drink of choice. So I enjoy it so much. So that's my first mindfulness each morning is preparing my cup of coffee, my gratitude journal, and I split it. So I do gratitude in the morning, and I also set my intention for the day, and then I do just a bullet list of 9 things that I'm going to accomplish that day. I do 9 things, and that includes my 32 ounces of water. That includes my 30 minutes on the stair mill. So whatever I have to get done to make sure that those are in first. So that's my morning ritual. I do it outside overlooking trees. So I get a dose of nature to reset that central nervous system. So sometime during the day, I'll have activity. I'll walk, I'll do yoga. So something like a physical practice in between with the working. And then as I finish my day, I close out with it could be 3 things I'm grateful for or 3 things I want to remember from the day. But that truly is like, it's just part of who I am. I've been doing this for so long that I've internalized it. And I, one of the rules around it or one of the guidelines around it, it has to be written and not tapped in my phone. I have to have a pen, have a journal, and write it out for me. I've tried that just thinking about it, and I can't. That's a slippery slope for me because 3 days later, I'm not doing anything. I'm still having my coffee, but I'm not doing the rest of my practice.
Oh my goodness. I share your love for coffee. I am the same. I have to have my cup in the morning and I don't drink anymore after that throughout the day, but that 8 to, sometimes 12 ounces of coffee, I've got to get that in my system. But I love that you start your day and end your day with gratitude. That's something that I know when we talked, you and I both share. And it's been a practice for me that has helped tremendously. But on top of that, in the evening, what I do is, in addition to the gratitude, I release things. And so I do a great release. So anything that I want to release, and it's such a gift because it allows me to not carry anything into my sleep, and I can sleep with, peace. It really is what I'm always striving for is more peace. And so I love that you do the gratitude, but also wanted to offer up my practice around the release, which is really great.
I love that so much, that learning to let go,
Yeah.
because I think in the past, like an earlier version of me, a younger version of pre all of this, um, kept held things too much
Yep. Me
and
too.
ruminated on them. And I told you I have that kind of spiraling type of thought. But I think that's what a beautiful practice to just incorporate that. I'm going to add that in because I think
Oh,
that
I love that. No, it is. And we shared that too. When I was younger, I used to hold on to things, overthink, and really just carry it with me, and I think it's part of the empath in me. Like I would carry it, and it would really, affect me in so many ways. And so I wanted to get to a place where I don't carry, anything. And of course, there are some things we're human, we're going to carry it, but I really do. I work really hard at releasing it and really surrendering it to God, and that's so sometimes I will literally write, this is what I'm surrendering to you, God. And then I will give him my list. And so,
that is beautiful because that also connects in with something I see happen in a creative practice because people will hold on to their perceived mistakes or it's not right or it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And, and when they ask, they're like, well, what do you do when you make a mistake or something? I'm like, I let it go. That's not going to ruin my joy of creating just because it didn't turn out the way I wanted to. And ultimately, that's the one thing I do hold one of my deep convictions. We are created to create. We are inherently creative beings. And so that's, I know we'll talk about possibly one of my favorite books right now is Your Brain on Art. And they use a very expansive definition of art. And so it can be gardening, it can be walking in nature. And they talk about the impact of art on your brain is in twofold. It's in the act of creating and the act of beholding. And so
Ooh.
you think of connecting that in with your faith, we are just inherently created to kind of complete the work. That's why we were created.
Exactly. And the gifts, because they're really gifts, and they're not ours. Like our creator gave us these gifts to create and to give them away, and I could not agree more. I need to read that book. I That is so good. I love that. I'm gonna mark that down. I'm gonna actually move that to the front of my line. I have a long list of books that I usually get from my soul fueler, my soul fueling guests. But I love that definition and how they just expand on it because that's really what we are here to do. And I think a lot of us, because we're not tapped in, and we're not even giving ourselves permission. You mentioned permission, earlier. We're not able to create, and there's so many definitions. We have such a narrow definition of what it means to be creative. And so I can't wait to read this expansive book and
Yeah,
learn.
this one it ended up, I read the first I encountered them was on Dan Harris's 10% Happier
Oh,
podcast I was listening to. I read more about it and started reading the book. It became sort of the underpinnings for creative meditative flow. And the part where we kind of end the class, and so each of the flow classes, I do a little lecture for them. And so let me share this. This is my favorite from toward the end of their book. You are the curator of your life. Your daily art practice is as vital as your exercise and your meditation routine. It's not a hobby, it's a conversation with yourself, a way to connect your mind, body, and spirit. And so, whatever form that takes, sketching, clay, baking, cooking, making something, whatever connects you with your flow state. Isn't that just beautiful?
oh, it's so beautiful. I just wrote it. I love that quote. So you're going to see it on my social media because that is so good. That it's so beautifully articulated because I was trying to articulate to someone like that's what keeps me aligned, like mind, body, and soul. I'm always striving for that. That's what my coaching is centered around, is helping people continue to keep themselves aligned because we allow it's really around energy because we give our energy away so much, and so we don't leave any energy left for us, left for us to create, left for us to even just be sometimes. So I love that quote. That is oh, that's gold, liquid gold right there. Oh my gosh. Well, you mentioned that book and you also mentioned 10% Happier podcast. Is there any other books that have, helped you along in your journey that you want to share with the audience?
Yes, let's okay. So yeah, I've got four really go-to that underpin my current thinking and my current practice. So the practice by Seth Godin is just the subtitle of it is How to Ship Creative Work. So it is the one that changed how I approached my creating my classes and my offerings because I would get so spun up of like, it's not good enough, it's not this, it's not that, it's like, just do it. And so I've embraced the idea of walk it out, set my intention, set my actions, do it, reflect on it, refine it, do it again. So that came from Seth Godin. Don't overthink it, let's get it done. Along the lines, my other favorite that's a companion with it is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. He's an author and just amazing. Like his interview on, I think it was on Marie Forleo's podcast, is the first place I ran into his idea. And I love him so much. And so his big quote that I'm always coming back to is that his concept of resistance, like when you're trying to do creative work, all of that, like procrastination, that Amazon shopping, all of that is just the resistance manifest in your life. And so I always share this with students. Resistance aim is to shove us away, distract us, and prevent us from doing our work. And so once you realize that there are these, like, it's not just you, it's just kind of innate. All of us experience it. So that's another huge one. I mentioned your brain on art. And then my other favorite's Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. And that's all about living a creative life. And so there's some really good concepts in there. And I love her story of creativity and fear and how they go hand in hand in that story she tells of in the car. She lets creativity ride in the front seat. She said, I know fear has to go with us, but fear gets in the back, does not adjust the music. I
Yeah.
know it's there. You acknowledge it and you do it anyway. And so then along with that is my favorite. I've got a couple favorites that I watch on like YouTube Shorts. And oh gosh, uh, it's a couple of those little 5-year-old snowboarders. And there's this one, and she wears a tutu. I can't
Yeah,
call her name.
send it to me and then I'll be sure to
Yeah.
put it in the description.
And so and they have her mic'd, and you can hear the dad coaching her on learning to snowboard. And you will hear her she'll say, I'm scared, Dad. I'm scared. And he will say, what do we do when we're scared? And she says, we do it scared.
Yeah.
And so that's what I repeat on repeat to all of the creatives I work with is yes, it's very scary to show your work on the camera when we come together. It's scary to post your work online in our course or to share it on social media. And we do things that we're scared
Yeah.
because if you don't, the fear and the resistance is to keep you small.
Yeah.
It's to keep you from doing the things that will help you and will empower you.
Oh, you named some good books. I mean, The War of Art is one of my favorite books. I mean, I so much that I listen to it or either read it annually. And so it's my go-to. That in Oprah's book and a couple of others. But I that is, I mean, it's so good. And I love that he talks about the resistance because there's companies that are paid to keep us, resistant what we're supposed to do, like keeping us, focused on buying, focused on doing this, everything else other than what we're supposed to do. So I love that he talks about that. And also you mentioned Elizabeth Gilbert. I love her. And that book is so good. And I can't wait to check out Your Brain on Art. That is my next read. So thank you so much for all of that. So good. Tell people where they can find you and also what's next for you.
Thank you. You can find me online, Superdoodle Girl. I have that on all social media accounts. The website is superdoodlegirl.com. And I have links to the mailing list. You can join, links to where you can find all the courses online there. Mainly, I'm most active on YouTube and Instagram. So the others are not quite as much, but I do post there as well. And some things that are coming up.
Mhm.
I am working on adapting, we did a 100-day playbook that was downloadable. And so we kind of guided people through a 100-day practice. So I'm adapting that into a coloring book for people who are not ready to do the full like creating, but they're like, you know what, I just like to color. And that is a great calming practice. So I'm working on adapting that. Also launching our Doodle Flowers this summer. So we are going to take a whole in-depth structured creative approach because I overdo everything. So we're going to go to the basics of we're going to learn to draw them. We're going to learn the basic shapes. You're going to learn flowers and lines. So just I'm going to overdo it with Doodle Flowers. Like if you can take it to an overdone degree, I can do that. And then I'm also working on some new styles of classes where I can kind of best of both worlds, because I know not everyone can come to the live sessions, which are a really big part of it. And so some people really enjoy that. But to make some of them a little more DIY to serve the ladies who can't come to our session. So I'm working on that. And then for my others, there's also a group that wants something more regular in a monthly format. I don't know what that looks like yet. And so I'm battling the resistance right now of like trying to make it perfect instead of like, let's just get something going. So, more ideas than time. I think you can probably connect with that.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially as a single mama of two. Absolutely. This conversation has fueled my soul so much today. I am so appreciative of you coming on and just blessing me, blessing our audience, and oh my gosh, like just so many things I learned today, and even more about you from our first conversation. And you're just such a gift. So thank you so much. And shout out to Ashley Ellington Brown. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for introducing us.
Right. Thank you so much for having me. It has been a delight to get to know you and to, share some of the things that I'm so passionate about. Hopefully it will help others because we all get stuck and need additional tools to help us get unstuck at times.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. And everyone, have an amazing Sunday.